I'm excited for this meeting and looking forward to hearing what everybody's thoughts are. The subcommittee met with John Call, and so I think we've got a good plan going forward with how to accomplish some of the ideas we've talked about at previous meetings. Let's start with consideration to approve the July 22nd meeting minutes.
You know what? Let's do the thought and the prayer first.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I jumped on. I'm a little nervous. Okay, let's go ahead and ask Mark Brown for the invocation or thought and pledge of allegiance.
Okay. Well, I'd like to share a thought this evening. This last weekend, I had the opportunity to go up to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And it was really interesting because there was still a lot of smoke, but I could see almost like through the clouds, North Ogden. And it was really a beautiful experience. And I sat back and I thought how important it is to make sure North Ogden keeps what made North Ogden the wonderful place that all of us know and love. And I hope that as we do that, we think back on why we came to North Ogden, what's made North Ogden special to us, and keep that in mind as we make decisions. And with that, I'll offer invocation. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you this time grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve our fellow men and to bless the lives of those that live in the communities around us. We would ask that thou would enlighten our minds, that as we discuss, we will think about ways that will strengthen our community and bless the inhabitants of it. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Lynn, if you could shoot the camera towards the flag, we'll have a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It goes everywhere.
Steph, you need to unmute.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for that, Mark. So I guess we'll move on to the minutes from July 22nd. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they saw that they want to change or have to say about those? Sorry, I'm looking for my notebook. I can't see everybody, Lynn, so I'm guessing you can see if someone raises their hand or unmutes.
I feel good about it.
Okay, thanks. Do we have anyone to approve those?
The minutes.
It's Grant. Anyone second?
Come on, John.
I'll second.
I think
I'll
Charlotte.
second. Mark will second.
We've got Charlotte and Mark seconding. I think Charlotte beat him to the punch, so. All right. So moving on to public comments. Do we have anybody on? Oh, we do. We have some participants. No, is that participants?
We just have one, and she hasn't raised her hand.
All right. Should we give her a minute? Okay. Well, I guess we will move on to, now what is it that we needed to switch around today? I forgot. Rob
We
Scott.
Uh, We don't, John said that was a false alarm.
False alarm, great. So we're gonna move on to number 3, discussion regarding Bicentennial Park and surrounding area. And I am usually one of the most well-prepared people, but I cannot find my notebook because I rolled in just as the meeting started, and I apologize. So when the subcommittee, when we met, we were discussing the moratorium. We were all kind of discussing that and where to go with that. Well, Councilmember Swanson had brought up to the city council in a council meeting that he suggests they do not do any more zoning changes while we work on this. So we felt that that was maybe something that we really didn't need to do at the moment. Of course, any that have already been applied for, those will still happen, but anything brought before the council or the city forward, I think Neil, or Mayor Berube, are you on? Do you know exactly what that is? It's from now moving forward, no more zoning changes until we get a chance to do this.
It was based upon the fact of a maximum of 6 months,
Yes.
with the hope that we could come up with a solution prior to that. But
Okay.
that was, I believe, the discussion that took place.
Okay. And I think that we've got a very mapped out plan of discussions that I think will keep us on track and bring it in so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. We chose the Bicentennial downtown area first. This is kind of the most obvious place right now that's available for any kind of building and new development as far as commercial goes. That piece of property that's owned by America First, that's privately owned, where the O'Reilly's is. And, the city is at the moment trying to sell that area where the retention basin is. And then also with the business, the animal hospital, wanting to buy that little piece of property from the city that's at the old Public Works building. And I know that one of the things that's been discussed in the past and is in our general plan is possibly expanding Bicentennial Park up there where Pleasant View Road is and cutting that off, making that bigger, more of a central area for our downtown, kind of a nice plaza maybe, something that's a little more general and for the community. And then it would divert traffic down 300, which would then, for the more traffic that's heading down there, UTA will want to put a light in there, and that will also lead the traffic towards what could possibly be an area that seems most favorable to walkable.
Stephanie, maybe Lynn could put up the map of that particular area so we can all.
Yeah, we can. And I don't know if everybody had a chance to go over their packets. I tried to include all of the maps in the general plan so you could look at it, see what it's zoned at, see where it sits, see what future parks planned for it. So that we could kind of discuss that and how we see that maybe developing and incorporating some of the walkable that has been discussed. Is that possible?
I think probably, I'm looking at the map. The map on page 11 is probably the best map for that.
Yes, and so that is a screenshot of the map, and we can also see who owns those properties. So I know that around O'Reilly's, that's probably going to be the next to receive any kind of commercial building. And does anybody have any thoughts on that and how that looks, or what they could see that happening with the idea of Bicentennial Park expanding?
That's my biggest question, is I'm wondering about expanding Bicentennial Park and what expansion means, considering we still have some parks that need repair, some parks that are needing to be built. What expansion would it be? Would it be a grassy area, or when we say park, what is the envisioning there?
Well, honestly, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that that is something that we would, that would be our planning. I think
The Parks and Trails Committee, would they decide?
I believe so. In the part, you know, kind of like planning, you know, they're going to do the more nuts and bolts of things. We're going to come up with, yes, we think that this would be great for the city for this to become a park. What that looks like is up to, you know, the Parks Committee and when that can be done. Because I agree, you know, parks is quite a discussion. There's also one slated for the property, I think, in between the America First owned property and the existing water retention basin. As far
Stephanie?
as, yes.
If I could just add a little color on that, if ultimately the Planning Commission and the General Plan Steering Committee indicates that that would be a good spot for the city gathering place, so to speak, the road widening is going to start next year, and to do that separately, if it was decided to close that road and force traffic down 300 East, which I believe is also a safety issue, that decision would probably have to be made relatively quickly.
Okay.
John Call could give us more insight on that, but it seems like it could be integrated maybe into the project and save some money.
Yeah, I agree. And I would love to have, as we put these discussions and have them, I'd like us to be able to end each meeting kind of with a decision of, yes, we think this would be great for that area. And then, you know, it be presented to Planning Commission. I just want to make sure that we're discussing what we have control over. And if that is what that park could look like, I would love to have that discussion.
I have a couple of comments on that. I watched the council meeting last night when they were discussing selling a section of that property to the animal hospital. And hearing John's discussion about what happens to that street if it's either vacated or we just not have it a street anymore and the city own the whole thing. I'm actually in favor of looking at expanding that area to a city gathering place. But I think the discussion on closing that street, which I do think it's a problem with the traffic from Pleasant View trying to enter there with all the traffic already backing up from 2700. But if, just as a comment, if that section of property were not sold to the animal hospital that they were talking about, it would create a big problem for that lower building to access Washington Boulevard. Right now it accesses onto Pleasant View Drive, and if we close that off, the lower parking lot has no access to that parking lot except to Washington Boulevard unless they can buy that property they're proposing to so that their traffic can flow up to the north side of the two buildings. So I just think, you know, I had to leave the meeting before I could comment on that, but I think that unless they can buy that property, which is just a small sliver, it allows them to, you know, still have access, but still allow us to go with, again, I think it'd be a good idea to have that park expansion.
John, now what site is the sliver on now?
It's on the west side. You can see the two buildings there.
Uh-huh.
They proposed last night just to buy a sliver of land to the west,
Okay.
which would then allow their two parking lots to connect.
Oh, great.
And then the lower one could access the upper lot.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, if we cut off the street, they've either got to put a driveway onto Washington,
Right.
and that makes a more congestion problem.
Right. Yeah. I know.
I don't think selling that's going to take away from much of the park expansion.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Can I,
that was my question. I didn't get to see what their discussion ended up last night, but part of the reason why this has come up when we talk in subcommittee is the planning commission has talked about this for a few years, of trying to figure out a way to close that off and wanting to close it off with this road construction project. And that clinic there, the animal hospital, is the only thing that needs that portion of Pleasant View Drive. And so if there's a way to work it out that they can access Washington, you know, through their upper parking lot or something, then that greatly benefits us. But it's, you know, kind of time is of the essence, both them wanting to expand their parking lot and buy the property, but also with road construction. And so that's why it kind of really gets top of the list to be figured out.
The indication last night was that showing that they could connect those two parking lots. So I thought that was a positive thing.
That's what I wondered. I didn't know what their proposal was, because I know before they talked about buying it just to add on to their lower parking lot, and he was vehemently opposed of blocking off that street because he wanted it for access to his parking lot.
and he wasn't at the meeting last night, so he didn't speak, but I remember, I know this discussion's been up. I didn't remember the part of him being against closing the street, but you know, it's,
I have a comment on closing the street also.
oh. Did Christina, did you have a comment?
yeah, just, sorry, really quick. I am in favor of closing the street, and I just wanted to clarify, well, before I say that, I think that road, I don't know when the last time y'all have been on that road, but if you are jumping on that road from Washington, turning left, it's really hard to get in that spot right there. When I go there, I just opt to go the street further and go around because it's just tricky to turn there anyway. And I just think that it would just greatly benefit the Bicentennial Park if we could stretch that out a little bit more, because I know they do like the elementary choirs do productions there when the Santa shop is in the works, and they turn on the Christmas lights. It's a big deal. So I can just imagine a great campus, almost just like a big platform area or something like that, where these events could take place and unify the community. So I'm a fan of it, but I just wanted to clarify exactly, was it like the whole spot that the street would be shut down, that Bicentennial Park could be stretched, or how much spot are we talking about here? Is this enough for some kind of like we could do some kind of fitness park instead of like a traditional playground park, or is there some kind of, can we make a recommendation of something else that goes there rather than just like a grassy area? So that's all I had. Thanks.
With the area there and the heavy traffic, I don't think a traditional playground would be appropriate there. And where would we have the parking for without taking away from the businesses in that area, is one of my concerns.
When we looked at it once before, I was looking at that Public Works property and shutting the road off to about halfway through that Public Works property. So about even with maybe the back of Lee's, but then you would make it like a cul-de-sac or a parking so that's where you'd put a larger parking lot and everything. So that park ideally would be accessed from back there, because, you know, it's not fair to Lee's that everybody that goes to the stump and uses Bicentennial Park uses half their parking lot. But so that's where kind of it was anticipated when we had discussions before. But again, and I think everybody's in favor of it. We probably don't need to get into the details of doing this. I know from a planning commission standpoint, you know, from when we did the general plan, however many years ago, it was always an idea that, hey, this would be good. But now we've got road construction happening, and some different ways to really that allows us that maybe it makes sense now if, as long as the city can work out something with that vet clinic to continue him with access.
Hey, this is Dan. If I could just throw in a quick comment. I just see an amazing opportunity where the city has a large parcel of land in the absolute center core of their business district that I think should be developed by the city. And I think that the veterinarian owner needs to be made whole with whatever is decided to do. But because the city owns property on both sides of Pleasant View Drive, adjacent to their old City Works property, that just allows for more land to be developed as a community for community property. I would not sell that land unless we were looking for any of that land. I wouldn't sell until we had a proposal for a good community park plan, unless it was had to be sold to the veterinary owner to make him whole. And I agree with Mayor Berube that that intersection is a safety concern.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like we're all pretty much in favor of that idea. It's just, I don't know where the city is with the animal hospital, and you know, if there's any kind of a commitment there. As far as I know, there isn't. But that's kind of the things that I don't think is anything we need to worry about. I think we need to look at the land, look at what's owned by the city, and you know, what would be a great thing to plan, and to say, we recommend this, you know, this plan, we recommend cutting off Pleasant View, you know, like Eric had even said, halfway for the parking. And as looking at these maps, that also extends where we could make kind of a trail going up along where Pleasant View sits right now and down by Northern Ice, and even bringing you down 300 and across the street. You know, I mean, that's going to be a busy street, but if there's a light there, that's going to access, you know, more walking and kind of the connectivity of the city that we keep discussing and wanting, you know, and so that's kind of where I'm at with all of it.
Stephanie?
Yeah, Grant.
I have a quick comment to make. You know, I think developing that area is going to be really good for the animal hospital, because that park area, a lot of people bring their animals there and they want to take them right to the hospital and play in the park while they wait. You know, I think that's a real asset. And if the city allows them that slice on the west, I think that makes them whole. But that is North Ogden City property, and it needs to be utilized in a way that doesn't ruin the animal hospital business. But certainly it needs to be developed in a way that benefits the majority of citizens. I see that as a great gathering area for all kinds of things. And basically, you know, we could create a fitness park. We could put a little platform in there for dance recitals or bands to play or all kinds of things. The parking just to the west there sounds really great too, to take the load off of Lee's. I think at this point, what we need to do is move this forward. And so I'd like to make a motion that the committee recommends that Pleasant View Drive be terminated, and that area be developed into a public gathering area, which is pretty open-ended. It can be a fitness gathering area, it can be a performance gathering area, it can be, you know, a pet show gathering area. But that would be the motion, that Pleasant View Drive be closed, and that area be developed, and the city do all they can to facilitate that. I need to add that. So Pleasant View Drive stopped, the property there is developed for public use, and the city do everything they can to facilitate that.
Okay.
Can I say something before they do a proposal?
Sure.
I'm all for this. I think it's a great idea. It is a dangerous corner. You're turning onto Pleasant View Drive, off of Pleasant View Drive. It's just not a good thing. My question is or my thoughts were, is this something that we can kind of continue with the city shop, turning it more into like, I mean, are we looking at putting that into a commercial area? Just kind of some people's views on that, because that does impact that facility also when it comes to if they want to sell it. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but if the city does decide to sell it, like Dan was saying, do we need to kind of give some guidelines on what kind of zoning needs to stay there? If there needs to be anything like that. Just, those were just my thoughts as I was just sat here.
No, I agree. I personally think would like to see that as a community gathering center. I mean, I can't imagine what kind of business would go there. You know, I think like the ice cream shop is always the favorite to be discussed, huh? Little ice cream shop. But I mean, I don't know. It would definitely, if it was any kind of business. Well, see, I don't even know that one would fit in there.
Did we have a second on Grant's motion?
No, I think Julie wanted to give this idea in so that we can make sure the motion included zoning and such if needed.
I'll second what Grant's motion is.
Thanks.
I think that covers all of it. You know, recommending the city maintain that, close Pleasant View Drive and leave it as a community, develop it as a community use property. And, you know, obviously that's broad spectrum, but we don't need to decide that stuff right now, but.
Okay. That covers that then.
And what we'll do as staff is with that recommendation, we will start working on amending any maps or plans that would be included in the modified general plan so that this group can approve those as part of the new general plan or revised document that will be passed.
Okay.
John, one of the things that Steph and I visited about is rather than giving this thing to the city council and the planning commission all as one, you know, wait until the whole thing is finished. Let's just take it section by section. And if it would be possible to move into zoning and so on and so forth around this area just as soon as possible so that the plan can be completed. Is that possible that you can take this section by section?
So the planning commission and council can act on anything
good
that's recommended as the general plan. As far as adopting one section of a time, that would be hard to do with the current structure of state law. Okay. That basically says you're supposed to create a general plan, give it to the planning commission, and then they give it to the council. But that doesn't mean the ideas that this group is suggesting can't move independently and then show up in the final document at the end.
Okay, and so the bottom line would be that would pretty much put the kibosh on turning that area into some kind of a condo high rise or something of that nature. Once the planning commission adopted and the city council approved it, just in the general recommendation.
With the recommendation that's been given for to do the vesting of the general plan, the zoning vesting, that would make it difficult for anyone to change it in the future to something else.
Hallelujah. I guess, Stephanie, if there's no more discussion on the motion,
I got it
to a vote. Oop, John.
Okay, I noticed later on it indicates that the terminating Pleasant View Drive at 300 so that traffic could go north or south. I would suggest that the only alternative would be to go south. Going north, it says up to Alberta Drive. There's property there, and you got to go past Lowman View Drive and then up to Alberta Drive. And I just don't think. I think all the traffic coming from Pleasant View ought to go south and not have the opportunity to go north. Just a consideration because of that comment.
Yeah, and that comment, just so you know, John, comes actually from the general plan. in laying this out for everyone to consider, I wanted to include what our current general plan says about these areas, so we can discuss that and make sure that, you know, while we're looking at these areas, we can look at what the general plan says and maybe see if we can change some of the wording to fit at, you know, where we're at now and some of the changes the city has made from, you know, since this was put together in 2015. So that's
Okay, I just don't think it's practical to try and run that street north. It's not going to do anything for easing the traffic, so.
Yeah, so and those are the notes that I want us to be taking and discussing as we're going through these areas. You know, it's a way that we can kind of tackle what the general plan says as well in small pieces. Grant?
Stephanie, John, for a little bit of background on that, part of the thought at that point was to try to circumvent the downtown area and make it make Washington less congested. I don't think this motion precludes doing either thing, and let's just separate that decision for another time. I fully agree with you. I think it ought to go south.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of the motion. I just wanted to make that comment about.
Well, that's good, and I'll make that mark, you know, in the general plan. We want to be noticing, you know, some of the things and having that discussion alongside as we're going through these areas.
Lynn, can we include John's remarks in the minutes? Because I think that's a point just about everybody here agrees with. I don't know if we want to make that decision or if we can make that decision, but boy, I totally agree with John. Go south, Pleasant View, go south.
Of course, we'll note that.
Bye.
Okay, so I'd like to continue on now that we've got the Bicentennial area.
Steph, you need to take a vote.
Oh, yes, we need to take, sorry. So do we just, everybody at the same time, right?
It's usually easiest if you ask if anybody opposes it.
Do I have anybody that opposes the motion? No, it looks like we're good. I'm trying to scan through everybody.
Right.
Okay, then motion passes.
Hallelujah, we've made a decision.
Thank you.
We're on a roll.
So I'd like us to keep on with the little spot that's marked in red and just have a little bit of a discussion on how we see the development of the property that's already owned around O'Reilly's. You know, we're not going to have any say on really what comes in or anything, but we can kind of brainstorm, I think, a little of how we can see that maybe developing. I know I've had some talks with Julie a little bit and Grant. One of the things that we've discussed is on 12th Street, you know, where they've got, there's not so much a turn in for each business anymore. You kind of turn in and there's a nice grass strip in the front and then you have access to all the businesses after. It seems as though that's already kind of being set up with the O'Reilly's so that you're turning into that area off of 300. But I think we could kind of look at how we see that developing to steer away from strip malls, the things that we've discussed we don't like, and that could maybe facilitate some sort of a walkability feel to it, because that can also eventually connect to where the pool is, the future pond and park is. I mean, that's all right in that area.
Great. Steph, I have one question.
Yes.
Who owns the little plot of land just south of Lee's?
I believe that's America First as well.
Yes, America First Credit Union owns that.
Great. Okay.
I'm looking at it right now.
Great. This is a great area that we're talking about there behind, you know, behind Walgreens and so on to develop. I would hope that we would develop it so that there were no more entrances off of Washington Boulevard, that they came in from, and preferably not even 2700 north. You know, that they came in from the west side or the south side of that slot to ease the congestion on 2700 north and Washington. And that area could really be turned into a nice little mini plaza mall area that would have some community attraction features as well as business features.
I agree. Like if you're turning in off of 300 and that gives you access to all the little shops or whatever ends up in that area, it might give it more of a, you know, a plaza type feel.
This is Don. I think right there on both on Washington and on 2700, that is 100% controlled by UDOT. I mean, they will try, I think my understanding is they'll try to meet the requirements or the wishes of the city and the citizens. But at the same time, they still have total control of what happens there. So best we could do would be to make a recommendation. So that is on the record, that is in the general plan. And I think they'll try to work with that. But they are very interested, my understanding again, is they're very interested in controlling the number of curb cuts, limiting that. That's probably in their interest, even far and above and beyond our interests.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Don.
This is Dan. I've got a couple of comments. I wouldn't worry about UDOT. Their goal is to move traffic. They have their limitations on curb cuts, but I do think that all of this property to the south of 2700 North should maybe be considered as more of a mixed use zone than just a commercial zone. I think if you want a walkable community and you want to expand Bicentennial Park, then you need to find a place close by that has high density zoning that can allow not just high density, but maybe higher standard high density, where people want to live in a walkable area that's downtown. So I think we should consider more of a mixed use zone. Farmington has a mixed use zone in their commercial areas by Station Park that I don't know if it's working or not, but it seems to be. I think to make this just commercial and look for big boxes or large commercial places are going to take away the ability to make it somewhat walkable.
So, Dan, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't think anybody was thinking big boxes. I wasn't. I don't know if somebody was, I missed that. I was thinking more smaller commercial businesses to come in. My concern with the mixed use is Patriot Point, Village at Prominence Point, they're almost their own little city. I'm not going to go into Village at Prominence Point and walk around. I mean, you know, that's their own little thing. I think about Ogden, you know, we've got kind of they've got the mixed use with the businesses and I believe most of those apartments are empty. So I'm not sure what that would.
There's a waiting list on those apartments.
Is there?
By the way, yeah.
Well, then that's interesting. So, that's not what I heard last, but I, again, have not updated or checked. So, I mean, maybe anybody else?
Steph?
You know, I also think if we're doing high density and adding that, we do need to be aware of our affordable housing. I think we've got a lot of high density mixed use going in and it's not affordable. So, Julie?
So Steph, I kind of understand what Dan's saying, but I don't know that I necessarily agree with him. Because as we look at this piece, if the America First property, I believe that's where they're going to move the bank to once their lease is up. And I could be wrong, but what I heard was that once their lease is up at where they're located, they are actually going to build on the piece on the south side, not the one on the north side. And with our retention basin, it's not that big. I mean, it's big, but it's when you start thinking about putting, you know, maybe nice apartments on there or something, you're kind of taking away from the area. And as Steph pointed out, the Patriot Points, those people will be able to walk there. It's not that far. And so that's most probably what will happen. Plus you've got all the people from the school, that if there's restaurants over, well, not restaurants, but eating places, I guess is the right word. If they're in that commercial area right there, then, you know, there's places for teachers to go if they don't want school lunches, which more often than not, you would much sooner not, at least in my case. And then you've got what is it called? It's not 5 Points. The you know, the older apartment complex. Three Fountains.
Oh, Three Fountains.
Sorry. Yeah, my mind went totally blank. You know, to have something over there for them also, I think, so they don't have to cross Washington Boulevard if they want to go get an Arby's. And I'm not saying Arby's is going to get, but that's kind of where my thought is going. So while I see what Dan's saying, if you want it walkable, I honestly think that we need to keep this commercial, and what happens, happens. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I think we've got Lee's there with the light that would eventually go in at 300 East. It makes it very accessible to people to walk from the neighborhood that's just behind Lee's. So I think it does make it a walkable area, more so than if we decide, you know, multi-use. But Dan, I understand where you're coming from, and thank you for sharing that.
I do too. I mean, and I think we should discuss it. I'd love to hear what anybody else thinks as well.
Stephanie?
Yes.
I really like the idea of a mixed use right there. So I guess I'm kind of on the opposite side. I agree with Dan. I agree that it's accessible, you know, with 300 there, but there's nothing to walk to if all it is more, I don't know, bigger things like Lee's. I don't know who would go in there, but if we had, I like the idea of businesses on the bottom with the nicer housing above. So then we have different, like smaller businesses, kind of like is on Washington, right in Ogden, you know, right there between like 20th, 21st Street and 25th Street, where they have businesses on the bottom and have like the nicer high density on top. Then there's places for people to walk to, like if it's just a couple of, not big box, but I don't know, medium box businesses over there. I don't really want to walk from Lee's across 2700 to, you know, TJ Maxx or whatever. I don't know what we're thinking. But so I do like the idea of a mix right there.
And I appreciate that. I guess, and see, when I imagine it with smaller, you know, I know that Ryan Forsyth has mentioned that there's a few restaurants, both eating and drive-through, that are interested in the area. So in my head, I imagine it more like when you go like to Bear Lake and there's all those restaurants there, but there's, you know, some little grass areas and places to eat and to go, but there's smaller businesses separate. You know, people always want a little craft store. I don't think we're going to bring in a big box, but, you know, or anything bigger than these smaller businesses. So I'm not sure. This is.
Sure. And Stephanie, I'm not sure we want to bring in a big box in that area.
No, I don't think so.
With the decision that was made on the Bicentennial Park area, we can continue that theme right through this property, and that bounces right into the pool and, you know, tours of the fire station that Ryan can give people, and, you know, all kinds of positive things. I really like the mixed use proposal for the same reason Charlotte does. I think that gives us capacity to to do a number of things. And I'm thinking about senior citizens now, for example. A lot of seniors inhabit those areas down there above Deseret Book and, you know, along that line. That puts them within walkable distance of banks, of groceries, you know, of Northern Ice if they want ice cream or, you know, whatever. I think the mixed use option is great, really great. And I wish someone would come in with a plan to take that whole area and turn it into something with little businesses down below and then 2 or 3 floors of senior citizen residencies, you know, residences above.
Yeah.
Well, I frankly don't think anybody else wants any more high density, and you can paint it and say that it's to make it walkable. But I think, is that making it walkable for future residents that want to live here, or is that making it for current residents that just want to park? And I don't think any current residents want more high density right now.
Are we calling it walkable because they have to walk across 2700 to Lee's, or because there's just a few shops there altogether?
Because that's a word that right now everybody really likes to use.
Right. But I'm just wondering if we're encouraging people to cross 2700 or not.
Well, I think when the light's there, it'll certainly be easier. You know, we're just trying to, I think that's what we're hoping to discuss and hear your thoughts or anybody's thoughts. We're trying to make it somewhat cohesive. How do we see this developing in the future? And I hear what you're saying, Grant. I just, you know, right behind Lee's, that whole development there, or not, let's see, just a little bit further over is a senior development. Village at Prominence Point is talking about making one of their entire buildings a 55 plus only. So, I mean,
Hey, Steph.
I'm falling right in the middle. I'm just not sure. Don?
Yeah, we've talked about this a number of times, and I know I kind of line up with a lot of the others have spoken. I really like the idea of mixed use, and it has 2 things. I mean, it does encourage smaller shops rather than big boxes. You'll never see apartments on top of Walmart. It encourages small businesses, which is really what we want to have down there, small local businesses for the most part. And with the mixed use component, if there's apartments and stuff above those, then the small businesses that come in have already got a customer base right from the get-go. And so I think it attracts, I think it does give us some components of really what we want, more so than, you know, just pure businesses, you know, commercial places where, and I'm not sure what that would be. But yeah, I really like the idea. And, you know, we've talked about this a number of times in different committee meetings and in the planning commission. And I think we have to be careful with that, because we've had a couple like the Cooperstown. They were talking about mixed use, but their idea of a mixed use was you stack 7 buildings and you put a building or a commercial use in one corner of one building. I think we've got to be, you know, specify that there's got to be a percentage, or all the ground floor has to be, you know, something along those lines to make sure that we do have the commercial component in there.
Yeah. Steph, Don, you can do that in the planning commission, can't you? And my question is, if we look at that whole swath over to the existing retention basin and say, let's take this whole area and apply that kind of a concept, we can have our own little corner of the world that is open to the public from the Lee side and the Smith side and so on, and the swimming pool side, but also has some residential mix in there with small shops. I think that whole swath we ought to look at as kind of a little mini downtown, like the area around the megaplex down in Ogden, except with some green space in it, rather than just parking and asphalt.
I would just add in there, I don't have anything against the mixed use and the walkable idea, but I would just hope that we aren't excluding certain businesses or types of businesses because of the way it's set up. Like if there's only space for a little gift shop or something, then those might end up being empty or not being filled. Whereas if it's a big enough scale that grand enough that it can have a Chick-fil-A on the bottom. I mean, I've never seen a Chick-fil-A with anybody living on top, but I mean, it doesn't have to be a Chick-fil-A, but I'm just saying, like, I know there's restaurants, people wish for more restaurants, and I don't want to set out some kind of boundary where we're gonna get rid of a lot of our possibilities and our options. So maybe there's a way that we can say mixed use or commercial. I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, this is really only a recommendation at this point. And I agree with Christina, you know, I mean, I can see mixed use that I love and I think is really great. I love the mixed use in Ogden around, that's going in, you know, not necessarily by the megaplex with the townhomes and stuff. I think that's really great. Behind the America First kind of in there. I just worry that we're adding more high density in a way, and it's not really affordable for anybody, you know, except we've just got a lot of that already happening. And I can't imagine a lot of people living above restaurants, which is what I'm hearing so many in our, you know, saying, I want more restaurants, I want more to see more of that. So I don't know, I'm just, you know, I like Christina's idea. Is there any way to recommend either or? We also can't dictate what comes in, but we want to be careful not to exclude.
Well, I think with a vision, and that's our job, is to create a vision. We do not create a blueprint, we create a vision. and I think that's a great vision for that area. To the east side, south of Smith's, we can put big box. There's some space in there. This space, a big box would just totally dominate everything. And
I don't see big box at all.
Yeah, the mixed use gives the option to do all kinds of things in there with a mixture of business and residential, you know, in terms of over stores or whatever. Let's put our preferences in, but I could see that area just as if you like the things that are happening down in the south end of town, you can make something like that in the north end of town, but it is accessible because of its location by Lee's and Bicentennial Park and the swimming pool. That whole area will be accessible to the whole community, not isolated just to the people who live therein.
All right, anybody else? Do we have any? So we're thinking mixed use commercial, mixed use or commercial.
Hey Steph, this is Ryan. Can I say something real quick?
Yes, please.
Maybe I'm speaking for the council as a whole, but when we decided to move the detention basin over to where it's going to be going in the Patriot Point, one of the big things we brought up was we did not want residential high density going where the detention basin is now, because what we said is if the detention basin now is in prime commercial land, why would we move the detention basin over to Patriot Point and take away high density just to put high density over on 2700? I don't see the council buying off on putting mixed use where the detention basin is, because that was their big thing, is they wanted strictly commercial there. But maybe their opinions has changed over time, but I don't think so.
Well,
hey, this is Dan. If I can just quickly comment to Ryan's, I'm not pushing for high density on this land. I'm only suggesting if you don't want big box commercial and you want more boutique commercial and you want walkable community, you have to have high density around it. I'm sorry, that's just part of the element of the way you make commercial mixed use. So I'm not pushing for high density, but you can't have one and not the other, in my opinion. So it's just a developer's opinion. I'm not trying to, sorry, my video was off, but I'm not trying to push an agenda here for high density.
Okay,
Well,
Grant, I think you had a thought.
Yeah, from my perspective, I wouldn't want that to be high density either. And I think we can, you know, I certainly don't want to push for that. But by the same area, if we say strictly commercial, then we put some, you know, we put some limits on it also. I'm wondering, John, Rob, if there's a way we can say commercial, but nice commercial that we really like and want.
Well, I'm wondering, I think these are all really good ideas, and I want us to be able to come to have discussions and come to decisions so that we're not, you know, expanding this so much. But I wonder if we all maybe come up with some ideas and share them a little of what we're thinking, because I think we all have really good ideas. Just trying to figure out how to best move forward.
Maybe, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Christina.
So maybe someone here on the board or present knows the answer to this question. I don't know how much space you need to have for a big box, but I'm getting the feeling that that spot there is not enough space to have a Costco or a Walmart or something. So I don't know if TJ Maxx, like you said, was a big box or a medium or whatever you want to call it, but it's going to be something of a little smaller scale than a huge big box kind of store, just with the size, right? That's my question.
Big boxes need about 10 to 12 acres.
And that one's, what's the existing retention basin?
That's 6. And
I think 7 was sticking out in my head.
Steph, can I ask Dan a question real fast?
Of course.
Sure.
Hey, Dan, so when you talk about multi-use, mixed use, excuse me, so we're talking about stores on the bottom and then apartments above it. So what kind of level are we looking at? Are we looking at 3 stories, 4 stories? I mean, that's another consideration to take into this when we're coming into North Ogden, not only from the south where we've got all these high apartments, you know, like 3 or 4 story apartments going in, but then coming in from the freeway, that's going to be what people will see. Just I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I'm just asking, when you think of mixed use, it's obviously going to be 1, 2, 3 stories.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm trying to think of the terminology of the construction type, but it typically, and there's a ton of it going on in the Salt Lake Valley and Davis County too. But it typically involves main floor commercial, and then there's 4 floors of high density and all of it has underground parking, which creates, if you create surface parking, you just ruin your walkable environment. So yeah. Most of these developers that are in high density or mixed use commercial developments are developing 4 stories high of residential and then underground parking with retail on the main floor. And that's going on in a lot of cities. And I'd be happy to send some, I'd be happy to take the obligation to send some photos or some stuff of some of the developments that are going on in some of the communities like Midvale and Murray and Draper and lots of cities.
Dan, that actually, so that kind of helps with what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, what if we move past this and table it till the next meeting and we start the next meeting? You know, we know we're kind of going back and forth between mixed use and commercial, but I would love for maybe some visuals of what, Dan, what you're saying, and maybe I could find some of what I imagine, and we can kind of look at that and see if that helps us to see it a little bit more clearly so that we can kind of button up this part of the discussion. I don't
I'd be
think
happy
we
to
need
do it. I'd be happy to send it to the committee. I'll
Okay.
take some photos and send it.
Grant?
Thank you,
Let me
Dan.
put this in a motion form that's a little broader than just Dan.
Okay,
but-
can I, before you do that, can I say, I would love for anybody on this committee, if we kind of had a little bit of an email sharing that, so.
Yeah, and that's part of the motion. The motion is that Dan and others who have some ideas about this area, try to get some concrete examples of those ideas, either pictures or articles or so on, and send them out to the whole committee and let us react to the person who shared them, so we can have a lot of this discussion over by the time the next meeting's held. So the motion's two parts. One, Dan and anyone else who has ideas about what this area ought to look like, share them with everybody, and let's interact with each other outside of the formal meeting. And number two, make this the first thing on the agenda next meeting.
I second that motion. That motion.
It's
been a day. I got a new grandbaby, so I'm sorry.
Okay. Cool.
All right, do we have any that oppose that? No? All right, motion carries then, is that the right words?
Good.
Okay.
Can I ask really quick, what is that retention pond area zoned as right now? Because I know it's currently for sale, so somebody could technically buy it tomorrow, right? What is it zoned for right now?
It's zoned RE20 currently.
What does that mean?
Half acre residential lot.
Lots. Great spot for a half acre lot.
With a big sound.
John, I think it would be appropriate to say that the council based that sale on the fact it would be rezoned commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
What type of commercial is still up for grabs, but I think to Ryan's point, council was pretty firm on the fact that that was the whole justification used to sell the property and move the basin over, well, at least 90% of it. For the reason. So just a reminder.
Yep, to increase the tax base.
It's also, I think it's also on that main road and some of the last property that's undeveloped. I think it would make great commercials. So yeah, but I think I'm look forward to seeing what everybody's ideas are and what they envision that. Also remember on the future land map for parks, there is a park designated right there in that area as well, in the general plan. So that is in those maps as well. All right, moving on to number 4, discussion concerning change improvements to strategies in the general plan regarding the downtown Southtown area. So this kind of goes to where John had mentioned the wording, of Pleasant View and 300 East having traffic going up and down. I included in here the discussion or the top priorities from the general plan. So what I have here is from the existing plan and what it says and calls for our downtown and Southtown area. And so, part of what we've discussed is cleaning up the general plan, making it not so big and thick and wordy, and maybe things that are really, that really have to do with how our city is changing and how it's changed since 2015. There's a lot of things in here that I don't think really work for these areas anymore. So I don't know if everybody got a chance to read through this and what their thoughts are, if there was something that stuck out to them.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, sorry, I guess my Siri was on. There's a few things that, I've seen in there. Clearly, Central Amphitheater's been moved, gathering spot for movies. There's some things that we definitely change that will no longer work in Southtown, downtown area. But anybody have any thoughts on it and what it says?
I have a thought, Stephanie.
Okay, I would love to hear, Evan.
So the general plan talks about create a unique pedestrian-friendly downtown near the intersection of 2700 North and Washington Boulevard. In many ways, we've kind of lost the opportunity to do that because we've allowed auto-oriented development in that area. The area that we've just been talking about is the exception, though. We still have some open land and some opportunity to fulfill that vision. In the Southtown, I feel like we may have more opportunity for a walkable area, partly because of the recent development with the Village at Prominence Point, as well as opportunities at North Ogden Plaza, which is down there. So I just wanted to point that out, that it really could be a pretty nice walkable area if that became a priority for the city. Even though we've had the idea of a walkable area up north, we haven't really held strongly to that idea. I think if we are serious about a walkable area, we've got to translate our general plan vision probably into some more concrete standards in our zoning ordinance. And I know that Rob has done some work on some ideas for changing our code in order to make something like that possible. But anyway, I think the Southtown really does have opportunity to become a nice walkable area if that's a priority for the city.
Okay. And I know that we've talked about that in the general plan in this committee before. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? I know we've been doing the widening of the sidewalks and things like that. As I try to envision it, especially with Village at Prominence Point, again, I'm not sure the car wash and stuff, what would be there.
Steph, can we have Lynn maybe show us the map of that area, the area we're talking about?
Yeah, I also don't want to get hung up on Southtown tonight, if that makes sense, because I know that we've got that in the next one, and so I want us to look at that and focus on that as well.
Which map do you want to see, Grant?
Oh, let's see. The Southtown map. Let me look at which one it is on my set of agendas. Down further, yeah, there we go. Huh. Well, I'm not sure where that's at. Hold on.
Can I make a suggestion? Because I like what Evan said, and I think that, so I know that we talked about walkable and we hear it a lot. I don't know that we necessarily have to have one area as walkable versus a second area that's walkable. I think that if the development lends to walkability, we should just simply look at that because it's, it's nice. It works well with the community. I think I'd like to see if anybody has any thoughts on the wording in the general plan area for downtown. Since that's kind of what we looked at today. And then at the next meeting, we'll have the Southtown map specific, and we can look at that and take what Evan said today and make sure that we're including that into next month's meeting.
Lynn, I think the map that I was looking at is on page 14. And I'm still not clear what we have defined as Southtown. There's been some talk about an entrance area into North Ogden, and we're rapidly losing opportunity to turn that into anything. And then Southtown has kind of included both sides of Washington with the Kurtz Drive-In area and you know, and our pizza place and the other small businesses there, as well as the other side, you know, which is the Prominence development and the car wash. So when we talk about Southtown, what do we really mean?
Well, Grant, I think that we ought to finish up today's with the discussion of what the general plan says about our downtown, because that's kind of what we've been looking at.
Yeah.
And next month we'll start with kind of what we discussed already, the pictures and stuff, and we'll start moving into Southtown with, I think, what Evan said in mind, you know, as a plan to, okay, let's discuss, is this walkable down here and how can we?
So we've talked this evening about the west side of Washington. Maybe we can talk about the east side of Washington in our next meeting as part of the downtown area. And I'd like a really good definition of what walkable means. I think many of us have a variety of opinions about what walkability means. And so if we can have a definition that we're working from, that might ease some of the confusion. And I don't know who'd give that to us. I wouldn't ask, I wouldn't ask Mark to give it to us, or we'd be on trails all the time. But, you know, if we can have a definition of that, maybe from.
With the discussion we had today, focused on that undeveloped area and possibly being walkable. Right. I think we're going to be able to define that a little bit easier once we're able to look at some visuals of what everyone brings to the table, and we can probably sum that up.
Good. Okay.
After we do that, as we, you know, I think that's going to be able to kind of evolve with that discussion more, how we all see walkability. And then
Stephanie.
Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Sorry, I was just trying to clarify what you're after here. Are you wanting to reword the downtown area in the general plan now, or just kind of ask for input of what we can add in the future, or what's our goal here?
What our goal, or what my goal in adding this discussion is, we're ultimately the general plan steering committee. So we're going through and we're looking at, you know, the zoning. We know that we've kind of done that, but we've also discussed how big the general plan is and how can we make that more user friendly? How can we kind of bring that down and get rid of the fluff and the stuff that doesn't, you know, that no longer really applies to where the city's at. So I thought, since we're discussing the downtown, we're looking at that and what we visualize for it, it's a good time to kind of look at also what the current general plan says about this area we're discussing, and any suggestions. I don't think it's going to require any kind of a motion, but if we can kind of see what it says, discuss it, and make notes of things that we want to change as we go back to start looking at just the general plan alone after we've worked through this 6 months and the zoning, investing. It'll be a little bit easier because we'll have notes in the general plan. At least I'll be making them that we're taking as we're discussing those areas of the city. Does that make sense?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Steph, can I give an example? As I was reading through it, there was a paragraph that kind of hit me that maybe, I'm not saying we don't need it, but maybe we need to look at how it's worded. It says, work with UTA to enhance existing transit and explore future opportunities, such as developing a bus hub and or establishing a bus rapid transit system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, what we need to look at with that is do we need a bus hub here? Is that something that, you know, maybe we just need to look at making sure we improve what we have.
Okay.
just kind of give you, that's kind of what went through my mind as you're looking to make changes.
Yeah, that's great. So that's the kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because you know, if you look at the ridership on the number 12 bus, it is almost non-existent. We do have it, but it's not, you know, a great one. But is there ways to improve it for people as they come into the city to understand how to get into downtown Ogden and from there to Salt Lake?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, I think what you're looking for. I hope you know, I might be speaking out of turn.
I don't want it to turn into big, long discussions, just simply this wording here, I do not feel, you know, doesn't really apply. Like for me, again, some of the description, the on-street parking, I'm not sure that that's going to really work for Washington so much. Central amphitheater and gathering spot for movies and other productions.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that that fits where the city's at right now. Just, is there anything that, you know,
I like how it talks about how the downtown is the heart of the community. And I think the more that I think about this property that we've been talking about, the more I just feel like we need to have our commercial downtown, because there's going to be plenty of growth in the city. And where's the commercial going to fit in later as we boom and grow? And I feel like the heart of the community is going to be your central spot for all your errands. When you've got to go to the post office, or you got to go to the UPS store, and you got to go groceries, and you got to do this and this, you're going to want it to be all in that heart of the community. So that's one thing that sticks out to me.
Okay, and see, I love, yeah. And I think with us making that decision on Bicentennial Park, that adds to that feel for sure.
Mhm.
And Steph, there's one point in here that I really liked. It's actually under the vision for North Ogden on the general plan on page 6. It says, create a unique downtown that complements the desires of the community with an improved appearance and public spaces.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that we need to make sure that we stay on top of, is that we do make sure that the public is able to give their input, with them understanding it may not happen the way they want it, because from this general plan, there are some things that happened and some things that didn't. And I participated in the last general plan when it's part of the public things. And it was great for people to come together, share their ideas, and hopefully, you know, as we try to make this more easier for people to understand, they'll be able to share without being like, well, we don't want this. You know, this is what we're looking for. How can we incorporate it? So I think that's most probably one of the best statements in the general plan, if you want my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of really great stuff in the general plan. So, you know, I hope that we can thin it out and keep those things, you know, like the heart of the community in the downtown area, and build upon that. And I think the Bicentennial is a first step to it. And I hope that we can come to some good conclusions and some good, you know, ideas next week when we can visually see what everybody's thinking. Grant?
Stephanie, I'd like to put as number 2 on our agenda for the next meeting, looking at the east side of Washington as part of the downtown plan. And let's figure out if this walkability is going to include crossing Washington or not, or if we're looking at two separate pods, or, you know, because there is land down there all the way from the old torn down doctor's building and Zion's Bank north. There are some options in there that are inherently important to the whole concept of a downtown. And I totally agree. A downtown is where you go and you do all the things you want to do, and you see your neighbors and friends, and, you know, have an ice cream without having to walk all the way down to Southtown.
Yeah, I agree.
So the motion is that we talk about the east side of Washington in our next meeting, and then move the agenda. Move on to the next item.
Okay, does that require a motion? I'm just wondering, and still, I would like us to also discuss, so I think we've we've got the motion with the Bicentennial Park and continuing that discussion and finishing up how we all see that big empty space right there. And then, yeah, we'll continue on with the east side and also into where the new Patriot Point will be, starting it and then starting us into Southtown.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Any other thoughts, anybody? I'd like to keep us moving. And as soon as we get through Southtown, we'll start looking at parks and trails and the residential so that we can kind of stay with a really easy plan. We feel like we're taking bite-sized pieces, so we're accomplishing things. So, but any input would be great. I'm going to take none as a good sign.
Okay. I think we're set, with next meeting's agenda. We've got a motion already we passed about what the first item on the agenda will be, and it's everybody's homework and our interaction with each other about the area west of America First, etc. Next thing on the agenda is the east side, and then we'll move on to, to the other issues. But I think at this point, we probably are ready to hear the comments from the mayor or the staff.
Any staff committee. Does anybody from the committee have any comments?
I have an item, and I brought this up before. I mean, we're talking about trails and all of these incidental things, but the very first meeting I attended, we had the general plan map out there, and we were going to establish some areas of the city and start working on what the general plan was. And we also have this issue of transferring property. But before we can transfer property, we've got to, in my opinion, decide where in the city we're going to have high density, where we're not, so that they can move forward with this transfer in property. I would like to see us finish that project that we started with the 4 groups, identify the areas, and then get down to the nitty-gritty. I think that it would lend itself to us moving forward a little faster.
Okay, Can I
comment on that, Steph?
Yeah, go ahead.
John, I think you're right. The reason we wanted to do the Washington Boulevard corridor first is because that's where the most pressure is for development right now. And if we can get that nailed down, then the next step, I think, in the outline that we sent out would be to deal with exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I'm hoping the state legislature gives us some alternatives to transferring property development rights as a way to handle increased density and maintaining our farmland. There's some options out there that they have not provided yet that I hope they will.
Yeah, and my point is, when that time comes, we're not in a position to move on it because we haven't established what those are. And I have no problem with us getting this downtown, Southtown thing resolved, because I think we're that close to doing that. But I'm just suggesting a next thing before we start talking about trails and everything else, that we need to get what we want the whole community to look like.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we can put trails and parks at the very end. I just meant they'll come after Southtown and downtown. But I also think in establishing our Southtown and downtown, we are talking about some areas that are already set for the mixed use and the high development. So we can, as we talk about that, we can see, we've already talked about mixed use in the new areas, and we'll continue that next time. That helps in deciding how to establish where that high density will be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I also think that as we get into the zones and the residential, we bring out our affordable housing plan that we put together as a committee at the first of this year. I think we did a really good job on that, and I think we should make sure to reference that and remember, look at the work that we've already put into it and the discussions we've already had, and make sure we put that to use as we plan on residential, but yeah, I think that the next 2 next two meetings, we'll be able to finish this up real quick, and then we'll get onto residential. But that doesn't mean that we can't be looking at that and knowing that that's coming down the pipeline, so that we're already getting some ideas.
Good.
Any other committee comments? All right, staff comments. Is there anybody? You heard Evan. And,
Stephanie, Rob Scott.
Hey, Rob.
Hi. Interesting discussion this evening. We had the assignment to identify the land uses within the downtown and Southtown area. And so there was an amended agenda that included that information.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a map and also a table showing the land use. So
okay.
Lynn, if we could go to page, I think it's 13 on the agenda packet.
I did see that map. And
so what's as equally important is the statistics that go along with the map.
Just a sec, I don't have that up yet. Just one.
Isn't that the one at the end that Grant referred to earlier? I think we moved clear down to the bottom.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I think it's on 14.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. So approximately within the downtown and Southtown area, there's some 700 acres. So still, that's a substantial amount of property. And one of our planners, Kai, has put together these statistics for us so that you can see that commercial occupies, you know, what, at least a little over 10% of that area. Residential, almost pretty close to half. Quite a few parks and rec, institutional uses. That includes the governmental complex, the fire station, the, I think it also includes, I think that's pretty much it as far as those, some 45 acres there. We have some manufacturing, 20 acres. We still have 100 acres that's in the unincorporated county. Now, I don't know what the breakdown of that is relative to the land use that's there, but there's some another bit of potential there for city expansion. It's an important land use is roadways, and you can see 130 acres out of the 700 acres, including a wide straight like Washington Boulevard. I was actually surprised that it was that low a percentage. And then another one that's sort of a little bit of a surprise is that we only have about 13 acres of undeveloped land or vacant land for transition. So that's kind of an interesting set of data that would help hopefully the committee and taking a look at coupling the future policies with what is existing on the ground, or the potential for what's on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you'll go, Lynn, if you'll go to the map, just the next, I think it's the next slide down,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that we've taken these various land use categories, and then we've put them on a map. So as you take a look at those two areas, downtown and Southtown, you can see that those categories are identified. So as you further contemplate this, I think that'll be a helpful thing for you.
yeah, it definitely will be. It's great.
So there's nothing like a graphic representation like this, I believe, to really help us really focus on some of these things.
Mhm.
So the second thing I did this today, and I apologize that I didn't get out to you sooner, but Lynn, if you could pull up that land use code progress report, and I'll make sure we email this out to you as well. But I wanted you to know that staff has been diligently working on these ordinances in conjunction with creating our land use code. So Lynn, are you able to pull that up?
Yep.
Thank you.
Rob, good job. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Well, we've got a very nice team on in our planning department. So what we've been working with is our consultants and using the downtown and Southtown codes, our basis for those codes from our general plan. So I just described the first thing, which was the land use map and the statistics. The way that the ordinance is created for our commercial and manufacturing zones, they're divided into what they call articles. So Article A is the commercial zones. And as such, what we have done as a staff is we have synthesized the C1, 2, and CP 1 and 2 zones into one zone called neighborhood commercial and a second zone called community commercial. So we have been working, we've combined the purpose and intent sections. The site development standards are one that we haven't messed with much. There's a requirement for site plan approval. There you can see there's protections for residential properties that are next door to commercial. And we have some sign regulations and then a use table. Many cities, and we are in this same circumstance, is that instead of trying to list every use under the sun and you have pages of uses, they simply categorize them. So for example, all the retail uses are just identified as retail instead of trying to list them all. So I'm not quite ready to disseminate the draft ordinances, but as soon as I am, I'll be happy to share them with this group and the Planning Commission and Council, obviously. So our next steps are to work with Article C, that's the design standards. And you've been talking about the differences between downtown and Southtown. This is going to be a critical part of our discussion as to what are the standards that are going to be able to differentiate the two areas, maintain that sense of place. What are things we want to preserve? What do we want to change? What do we want to introduce? Next, Article B, if we can scroll down to the manufacturing zone. So we've determined that the best way to approach this thing, given our resources, is to maintain our manufacturing zone. As indicated, we only have 20 acres in the town with respect to that, but it has similar sets of standards that are included in there. The next steps for us is to review the development standards and add sign standards. Oh, and I should mention we've combined or synthesized the uses in the use table as well. Next, move on down. So the design standards for commercial, that's really a big one for us. And we'll be working diligently to come up with some things relative to that one. The residential zone, I've pondered this over and over as to how to create a reasonable opportunity for mixed use in our downtown and that. And I've come to the conclusion that there's a couple things that we should do. We have in our ordinances, we have what we call a PRUD chapter. We're going to call it just a PUD. Instead of planned residential unit development, just planned unit development, and group dwellings. They are so close together, the only real difference is just simply the size of the property that's involved. So been working on combining that into one chapter. And then for the downtown area, I've come to the conclusion that the most reasonable way for us to maintain a mixed use potential is to just retain the MPC zone. That doesn't mean we won't be tweaking it or making changes to it, but that's the one that actually has standards that relate to mixed use. So the next steps will be to work on that PUD and group dwelling chapter. I probably should have added, we'll be taking a look at the MPC zone for its standards as well. We have one last article. It's the entertainment overlay zone. This zone, I defy any of you to tell me what in the heck it is. It's never been used in the city. We're simply recommending that one be deleted from our list of zones. So
Didn't that come about when they were worried about adult businesses and so on?
we actually have a separate, a
Okay.
whole separate chapter that really is not the entertainment overlay zone. It's a different deal. We call those sexually oriented businesses, or SOBs.
Well, I think this looks great. I am happy to see no discussion on the NPC zone. I know we need a mixed use development zoning. It seems like it right now it's so wide open. Village at Prominence Point is what on their 6th amendment. So it would be good to see some standards that are, you know, that are a little more solid, or would be great.
And one of the, this is going to sound like I'm defending all of these amendments and what have you. I'm really not. But when you have a project the size of that one, and you go through over a 5-year period, it's not uncommon for the market to change. Dan Nixon could talk about market changes and how we need to be responsive to those kinds of things. So some of the things that have been amended, yeah, I get why they're maybe created some angst, but then there's some other things that in a lot of ways seem to have been somewhat reasonable. So.
Yeah, and I agree. There's, you know, I mean, things change and flex, especially on the time and how long it takes. But, you know, just anyway, yeah, I know.
So I will, I'll make a couple of tweaks on this outline, and then I'll get it to Lynn and she can shoot it out to you as a committee.
All right, Grant?
Rob, on the list of items you have there, if there are any things that you want us to provide input on, this committee, if you could just mark those, because I know some of them are clearly the planning commission thing, you know, responsibilities to oversee. But if there's anything on this list of things you would like our input on, please make it clear and we'll try to get it together for you.
Sure. We did have a discussion, and I don't know if it's the last meeting or the one before that, where we took on under commercial zones where it talks about next steps. There were some things that the committee weighed in on, and that was very helpful. And I think that especially when we get into these design standards and that your feedback will be equally helpful as part of that as well.
Super. Well, we don't want to overstep our bounds, but we do want to be helpful where we can.
Sure. So you also asked about, I'll make one more comment relative to walkability. And the city adopted what we call a complete streets policy here, I think it's within the last year. And the intent of the complete streets policy is to recognize the variety of opportunities for transportation, everything from foot traffic to bikes and as well as those evil cars that we all love, and public transit, et cetera. So one of the things that when we start getting into looking at design and what have you, walkability is not just one thing. It's just, and it's one of many options relative to how designs are created in such a way that it makes it function to be able to have each one of those transportation modes equally effective. So you asked for a little comment on that. There you go.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
That's all I have tonight.
I've looked at the complete streets, and I'll pull that up. I actually should pull that up and we can share that with the committee. We'll send that to everybody. Any other staff comments? Anybody else? All right, Mayor.
Well, once again, thank you for your willingness to serve the community, and know that as your council and staff, we're here to support you, and just let us know what we can do to help. But thank you so much for your time and efforts.
All right, well, I'm glad you could make it tonight. And thanks to everybody who came. The input was great, and I'm really excited that we've got a start and that we have the plan in motion. So with that, do we have any motions to end the meeting?
I motion to end the meeting.
Thanks, Meg. Any seconds?
Second.
Thanks, Dan. All right, we have a second. So thanks, everybody. And look forward to seeing your emails. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Okay, thanks, guys. See ya.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks,
you.
Lynn.
Poor land.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steph. Good job.
Okay.